You are listening to Inspired Caring, episode number 91. Hello, welcome to Inspired Caring. I'm your host, Michelle Magner. If you are caring for an older family member, this is the podcast for you. Each week, I bring insight, tips, inspiration, and strategies to help you care for the people that you love without losing yourself along the way. Having cared for both of my grandmothers, I've helped manage everything from hospital stays, households full of belongings, to navigating senior living and end-of-life care. And I've worked in senior living as a result of that experience, serving my residents and their families as they've been on this journey too. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy this episode of Inspired Caring.
I'm here for it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ellie, for being here today. You look amazing.
Thank you, Michelle. Likewise.
Not surprising. So if someone is listening to this through their podcast player, you'll have to go out on YouTube and see how stunning Ellie Steinbrink is with Style Decoded. I'm so excited.
Welcome. Thank you for having me on, Michelle. I think this is going to be a really fun and maybe a different topic than you guys have really covered on the podcast before, but as you're going to find out soon, why I feel it's so important.
Well, I agree with you. We met at a network meeting here in Omaha, Nebraska. And as I was thinking through what you offer your clients, it really hit me how important this is for those of us who are on this caregiver journey, because so often we put our own selves on the back burner to take care of other people. And we start to lose our own identity and lose touch with ourselves. And I do think that what we put on from the moment we wake up in the morning ties in with all of that. So let's just start with you telling us a little bit about your business and what it is that you do.
Yeah, well, that was a great intro. And I think you're right. If I can just speak to what you said there, and I would say it's true not just of caregivers, although I do understand that that is a special time in someone's life where you're being called and your time and energy is being demanded of. But what I've observed in working with women is that it's actually very common, whether you're a caregiver or not, for us over time to just sort of lose sight of ourselves, pour into others, pour into our other responsibilities. And, we end up at the bottom of our to-do list, which is just part of it. But in that happening, there is that point in your life where you say, well, what is it that I care about? What do I love? What is it that I want for myself? So that was a fantastic intro. My name is Ellie Steinbrink, as Michelle already introduced me as. My company is Style Decoded. I started it almost 3 years ago in the middle of the pandemic. But styling has not always been my life. It has not always been my career. When I first started out out of college, I wanted to be in marketing. I joined an advertising agency. I was in client service. I poured myself into helping companies develop their brand, develop their communications, develop their content, and spent about 20 years of my life doing that. And along the way, I had, my colleagues, friends and family that I knew would always say, you look so pulled together all the time. Can't you just come and come over to my closet and, help me out, or let's, take me shopping someday. And I kept thinking, well, wouldn't that be a dream? That doesn't even seem like reality, that is something I could actually do. And as the years went on, this idea of styling as a life, as a business, kept just tugging at me. And so when the pandemic hit, I had been working with a company, a very small family-run business at the time. And their particular line of business was hit very hard with the pandemic. And I was let go. And at this time, I'd already started to do some styling on the side because that little nagging had never quit on me. And that was my sign. That was my sign from the universe that I needed to align these worlds, my passion of wanting to style women and, my passion of creating brands, and put those two together. So what it has evolved into is helping women, busy working professionals identify their style, their identity, how they want to show up in the world. I like to say aligning their insides with their outsides.
Ooh,
And to
that's
make it
so
a
good.
whole, yes, I know, because to me, style is so much more than when we think of style, sometimes you see these images of runway fashion,
Mhm.
women who don't look like they're real. And that's not what it's about to me. To me, it is much more about bringing your insides to the outsides, a full expression of who you are, and getting rid of all the other shoulds that I should be looking like this. I should show up in this way. My coworkers look like this, so I need to show up in that way. So, as you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, at this point in our lives, women in their 40s and their 50s,
Mhm.
they have so many things going on that even if they do desire to have this for themselves, it can be very difficult to do it because
Right,
their time, their energy is just being pulled in so many different directions. So
right.
I like to offer this up to women as sort of a gift to themselves because it is not just about the clothes. It is about showing up in a way that feels like you, showing up in a way that gives you energy throughout
Mhm.
the day, which we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But in a nutshell, that's who I am. So almost 3 years running,
That's
loving what I do.
amazing.
I work one-to-one. I work virtually, which I know to some may sound crazy, but it works wonderfully. And it's not just style, it kind of feels like therapy session sometimes because in the process of figuring out your style, you kind of have to re-engage with who you are and what you want.
Yes. What really comes up quickly for me are two things. One is I feel like I'm caught between a really polished executive and my
Yes.
inner hippie from
Yes.
growing up in the San Francisco Bay
Yes.
areas in the 80s. And so
Oh,
I
yes.
spent a lot of my bandwidth as I've been starting and growing my company in this headspace about my brand and how am I presenting myself. And when I'm
Mhm.
working on mindfulness work, am I polished or is my hair, frizzed out? So I'm just thinking of how much energy I could have saved if I would have engaged with you sooner.
Yes. Well, there's a way I start off with all my clients, and I like to call it setting your style foundation. And so part of that setting the style foundation is doing a little bit of dreaming, visioning, Michelle, who do you want the world to know who you are? What is that version of yourself you've always wanted to step into? We go through a number of exercises to define your 3 style words. But the reality is that we can dream and vision all day long, but when it comes to putting those things into action, putting a style that you love for yourself into action,
Mhm.
what can happen is things get in the way. Things like shoulds, expectations set by yourself or others or the culture, rules that we've put on ourselves or other people have put on ourselves about how we should show up. I mean, just think about the image of a professional woman. Think of a stock image. And
Right,
what is she wearing?
right.
Um, we all can see that in our mind right now. That may or may not align with you. So that is probably the most transformative part of when I work with a client is yes, let's have fun and talk about what you want your style to be, but let's really figure out on a day-to-day basis what's not allowing you to step into that version of yourself. Did someone on the playground when you were a child tease you about how you looked or your
Mm.
body? Did you go into a workplace and decided that because everyone around you is dressed in a certain way that you'd better show up that way too if you want to be successful? Or you look just around, and if you're running your own business like you are, Michelle, if you look around and you think, well, all of my other colleagues are dressing this way, so maybe I should too. I
Mhm.
actually have a really fantastic story of one of my clients. She's a educational neuroscientist, and she actually taught me a lot of things that you guys will hear probably today. I'm going to speak to today about how what we wear impacts the rest of our day and how we go about our day, our interpersonal connections. But her story is one in which that she ran her own business. She would speak, she would run webinars, she would teach about teaching people about neuroscience and how powerful our brains are.
Wow.
And she is one, yeah, she's a great one to follow too. Stacey Danford is her name. We can put it in the show notes. But she is one that has a really fun, colorful, full of pattern mixing. If you kind of can envision this, just all out style. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And one day she had been working with this company, we're going to come and speak to this company, their organization, about, what she knows with brain and power of gratitude and everything. And they were actually at the near end of their contract negotiations. They were almost ready to finish this out and get her on stage with their organization. And in their conversations, the woman who she was on the phone with said, Stacey, everything's looking good. I just want to say, I've been looking around your website and seeing all your images. And I was just wondering if you might just show up on the day that you're scheduled to speak in something more business-like, more appropriate.
Ooh.
And as you can imagine, as a woman, now the thing I'll say about Stacey, she is by no means inappropriate in what she wears.
Sure.
Not by any means. So to hear someone say this to you and have it be a factor in your business surely took her aback. I know it took her aback. Mm-hmm. And here she was, struggling with, okay, I'm presented with this challenge now. I'm running my own business. It's important that I have a speaking engagements. I need to make money. I need to grow my business. So that's on the one hand, one voice. The other voice is, I cannot imagine myself stepping on the stage wearing whatever they have in mind as appropriate business wear.
Right.
And, she had a big decision to make. What do I do? If I go and accept this speaking engagement, I show up in something, I'll probably have to go buy something that they would feel is appropriate. I might be a little bit off my game because I don't feel comfortable wearing that, but everyone else feels like that's what I should be wearing. But on the other hand, if she declines it, perhaps she gets a bad reputation for her business, difficult to work with, whatever those might be. And it might be a hit to her business. What if word gets around and then I don't get any other speaking engagements? But I was so impressed with what she chose to do, which was to decline the speaking engagement.
Wow.
Because she knew, yes, wow. Can you imagine yourself doing this? She knew that stepping onto that stage as someone that she wasn't was going to affect everything about her delivery, about who she is when she, as a business owner, this is who I am. And actually what she has learned since is when she goes to conferences and there are other neuroscientists there, she's not like the others. And it's sort of refreshing. When you think of, let's generalize here, but when you think of a neuroscientist, you probably aren't thinking bubbly, bright pink pattern, out there fashion. You're probably thinking bow tie, an appropriate suit, So in some ways, this all was a part of her brand. It was not only just who she was on the inside, but people were actually attracted to her. And guess what? Instead of this being a big failure for her business, it ended up that there was several business engagements, speaking engagements that came right after she declined. So I love telling this story because one, I think it takes some courage to step up and say, I know I might not be fitting the standard by showing up in the way that feels like me, but when we can show up as ourselves, it really does. It improves our situation because we feel more aligned. We can ourselves come out. People get to see that energy is there that wouldn't be there if we're trying to pretend or wear a costume. So, I love helping women really tap into that for themselves because it is courageous, but it also is a whole heck of a lot of fun just to say, okay, take it or leave it. This is who I am,
Right.
you know? And there is something special in that to be celebrated.
Well, and I definitely think that's a gift of aging is you are much more inclined to lean into doing what's best for you.
Mm-hmm.
Not you're a little bit
Yeah.
less worried about what other people think. I
I,
think having the
I
guidance,
think you're right.
yeah,
Yeah.
of what that could look like for you is really important. And there was something
Yeah.
when you were talking about the image that comes to mind when you think of a business owner. I think about actually also two things. Well, okay, so let me back up. The other thing that came to mind initially when we were started the conversation was the items that I have in my closet holding on to things that maybe don't fit me anymore or not aligned with how I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking or feeling about myself right now, which sort of ties into body image and
Yes.
how we're showing up in the neuroplasticity. So let's kind of run with
Yes.
this and see where we
Yes.
land, because I think so many people that are in this specific role of helping aging family members, and maybe they have kids at home too, we do
Mm-hmm.
start to grab maybe whatever's easiest or most convenient, and maybe we don't feel our best in it. So
Mm-hmm.
weaving through what we have in our closet and how what those items are important for us as
Yeah.
we're getting dressed in the morning.
Yeah. Oh, you know, after I work through my clients and we talk about what do you want your style to be and what are the things that are getting in the way of owning that style, we also talk about body type and we learn about their best colors because these three things, when you can dial in these three things, your personal style, understanding your body type, and then understanding your best colors, it's sort of like your style toolkit. You're
Mm,
so much better armed to walk in your closet and say, what are the things in here that I really want to continue to hang on to? And what are the things that I'm ready to release just because they don't line up with what I might love for myself? And I'm ready to embrace that. They may not be a great fit, make me feel good about the body that I do have right now, not the body I'm wishing I'm going to have, but the body I have right now. And also colors that not only, I know people will say, well, I wear this color because I get lots of compliments wearing it, but it's also color has some really powerful effects. I talk a lot about, and I'll share, I think there's a blog I shared that will be in show notes about finding your power color and determining what that is for you. And I'm telling you, I lean into that to change my mood. I have colors that make me feel very energetic. I have colors that make me feel calm. I have colors that make me feel confident and powerful. And I rely on those things. But those three things armor a woman to go into their closet with much more confidence and clarity to say, okay, I'm ready. I've done this work now. I'm ready to take the next step and be brave and go into my closet. Now, that is probably the hardest step outside of, working through some of those barriers we have related to our style and how we want to show up.
mhm.
Removing things from our closet is probably one of the most difficult things that a woman will go to because closets aren't like cleaning out other spaces in your house.
Yeah.
They are emotional. There are things in there that are tied to maybe past versions of ourselves,
Mhm.
maybe a different size we were, or just a different time in our life. Maybe if you're a mom now, you weren't a mom then. If you're a caregiver now, you weren't. There's just different identities wrapped up in the things we keep in our closet. There's gifts that someone important to us may have given to us. There's purchases we've made that maybe there's still tags on it and we're feeling guilty.
Mm.
That these are all things that are common as I'm working with women and I hear about, I shouldn't let this go because and actually, Michelle, I want to share with your listeners a guide that I created. It's a detox guide, and what I've created in this guide is a list of, I think it's 20 or so questions that I like to. I when I do my own detoxes in my closet, and when I share with my clients, that it'll just help them be a little bit more judicious as they're going through their closet. Things like, am I hanging on to this because I feel guilty? If I were in a store right now looking at this exact item, would I buy it again? Does it actually fit me right now? Which I know is a very simple question, but we do tend to hold on to things in the hopes that we might fit into them at a later point down the road. And I'm a huge advocate of having clothes in front of you right now that fit you and that you can walk out the door in and you feel good in. Which is why I go through the body typing too, because I believe that any body, no matter what shape or size, can look amazing if we get you in the right proportions, the right shapes. So helping women to just really learn to love what they have now instead of always being in the suspended state of when I get there, then I can look good. When I get there, then I can feel good. But yes, the detox guide is something any of you can download. It also includes tips for how to organize things as you go. So if you're a person who's like, I don't know where these things should go, there should be piles for donation, piles for tailoring, piles for just trash it. And then tips for getting motivated to get started, because I know it can feel like an overwhelming task. But that is something I'd like to give to you guys in the hopes that it would help you go in there and be courageous, with what you want to keep in your space and what you don't.
Thank you so
cleaning
much.
your closet is, yeah, you're welcome. I mean, cleaning your closet is not just the benefit of clearing out a space, because I'm one that clear space equals clear mind, but the emotional piece of it, getting those things out, is really where I think that weight gets lifted for a woman when they're brave enough to go in and tackle it.
Well, and based on being a middle-aged woman, just entered my 50s, but speaking with women who are in their 40s and 50s and beyond, time and energy are our two hottest commodities. And I just envision having an organized closet of things that you actually like to put on, that fit you now, that look good on you now.
Yeah.
What a time saver that could be. And I'm just thinking about the emotional labor it takes every morning to get up and sift through things to find that one thing that you just decide to throw on.
You feel good in. Yeah. Let's actually talk about that, because there's real brain science behind this simple act of getting dressed. And I'm not sure, again, because when I said at the beginning, a lot of times when we think of style, we tend to think it's frivolous. We have the images of like the runway, and it's maybe a waste of money and maybe a bit selfish to think about your clothes. But I want to paint a different picture for you. And that is, there is a lot of research done, and there's brain studies that show that what we choose to put on in the morning can have a huge impact on the rest of our day. So let me just paint two different pictures for you. One would be, we wake up, we walk into our closet to get dressed, and we just pull whatever happens to be clean. Maybe it's at the top of our pile, because as you mentioned, I mean, even for me as a stylist, I don't have much more than a few minutes to get dressed in the morning. I have kids as well. Mornings are a hustle and a bustle, and there's not a lot of thinking that just goes on. It's an autopilot situation. So if I'm not careful, I might walk in and just grab whatever I see or whatever feels comfortable to me. What I always do. Okay. And let's say what you grab just isn't making you feel the greatest. I mean, it fits the bill for the day. Or maybe you look
covers
around
what
in your
needs
closet
to be
and you're
covered.
Thinking, whatever needs to be covered. It fits. And not what I love, but it fits, and there's lots of things in here that don't fit. But you walk out and you're just kind of, you might feel, I like to say, lumpy, dumpy, and frumpy. You might feel just a little bit like, it's fine, but it's not really adding much to my day. And in that case, what I find happens is that trickle effect, that one decision, you had a feeling. Okay. So what brain science tells us is that when we have a feeling, our brain activates. And this is any feeling across the gamut. We have a feeling, our brain activates, and chemicals are flooded throughout our entire body. Okay. So when we have, let's just generalize this, when we have a good feeling, our brain activates and good chemicals are flooded throughout our body. when we have a bad feeling, our brain activates, and you guessed it, bad chemicals flow throughout our body. Okay. So again, very simplistic, but this is, from my educational neuroscientist client, what I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're thinking of this scenario, walking into your closet and you're like, there's not that many options in here. We're just pulling what's good enough today. That single act invoked a feeling in you. And
Yeah.
that has been shown to impact your attitude, your behavior, your interpersonal interactions. I like to say, like, think about, maybe you're a little bit crabby with the people around you, a little short with them. Like if you're feeling off your game, or in a business setting, maybe you're not reaching out to a new business contact or a colleague to, let's meet up for lunch. That kind of stuff isn't happening when you're not feeling on your game.
Mm-hmm.
It's been shown to impact your productivity, which was a game changer for me, by the way, during the pandemic when I was working from home. Still do work from home, so that's a game changer for me. But if you flip the situation around and you wake up and you go into your closet and you have the best outfit to put on, maybe it's just a color that energizes you, or
Mm-hmm.
that makes your eyes light up in a great way, or something, it just lights you up, or it's a shape that feels good to you, or the material feels really nice, it just, you feel most yourself. When that kind of a situation is happening, there's a lot more energy there. You're feeling on your game. You might feel like you're sort of floating through air throughout your day. You're wanting to meet up with people. You're turning your Zoom camera on. You're reaching out to friends for coffee. Let's go do lunch,
Mm-hmm.
and your productivity, you're checking things off of your list. So this isn't happening by accident. It's actually happening because of that feeling you had in your closet that morning when you put your clothes on. So this is why I feel it's so important, especially for women at this age when they have so many competing priorities. They
Oh,
don't
that's
have the energy or the
amazing.
time or thing to think about it. The style is going to go to the bottom of the checklist. I guarantee it. Because why is it that important? And I want to help women put it back to the top of the priority list because I've seen it have these trickle effects. And it's everything from the days when you need to stand up and do something really big, like have a difficult conversation or do something in your business or your workplace that feels very important, all the way down just to the days when you're sitting in your house all by yourself. And for me, I'd rather choose, leaning into things that make me feel good, knowing it has those trickle effects. I like to say it's such an impact. You leave such an impact just based on that one single decision you're making.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it's very interesting, this idea of of how just something you put on can actually shift and shape the day.
Which is so important because I feel like so many people, especially they get that afternoon slump, but if you're still in, your sassy pants or some like a nice pump or have your hair done a certain
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
it seems like that energy is more sustainable throughout the day.
Yeah. And I think the thing to point out too is that it may be a pair of heels for one woman. It may be a bright red lip for another. It may
Mm,
be a, a luxury pair of, you know, cashmere sweatpants for another. It's all goes back to then what makes you tick. Like the
yeah.
story I tell is when the pandemic first hit and we were all forced to go home. I think I did what everyone else did. We were in our comfy sweatpants. We were sitting on the couches. We were potentially like kids. For me, it was kids flying all around and tons of distractions. And while I know there was many reasons to feel icky during that time
Mhm.
outside of just what you were choosing to put on, that was most definitely a factor for me. My norm had been I get dressed and I go to the office, and that gives me a certain feeling like I'm sort of putting armor on, I'm
Right.
ready for my day. And when I
Yeah.
come home, then I change into my comfies, and then I know it signals to my body it's relaxation time. Well, what I figured out during that pandemic time is that putting something on for the day instead of just staying in my pajamas or staying in my comfies was actually a trigger for my brain to get productive. It was a trigger, it was an energy booster that I didn't even realize was happening on a daily basis because we had never been in this situation. I mean, I had stayed home for snow days and such, but it wasn't until then that I realized, oh gosh, there is something to this getting dressed. It actually puts me in a different frame of mind. And so it was a couple weeks into the pandemic, and I was like, I'm just going to give this a try. I'm going to put clothes on. I'm going to feel like me.
Mm-hmm.
And in tandem with that, I got into a space where I was sitting upright at a desk, in a quiet space. That also helped. All those things are triggering to your brain. Hey, it's time to go. It's
Right.
time to get focused. It's time to, get into your groove. And it was amazing how things changed for me. So yeah, I do think there's power in it that we don't put enough weight into, right?
Well, and I really, really appreciate that you are offering this idea of just try it. Like this doesn't let's not get completely overwhelmed with we all need closet makeovers and
No.
doing extreme things.
Yeah.
Going through the guide that you've offered people is a great first step. Thinking through your body image, what feels authentic is a great first step. But then also just in general, just see how you feel after
Yes.
1, 3, 5 days of just trying
Yeah.
to do something different or layer it different. So
Yeah.
really
And
interesting idea.
that's a great point, Michelle, because I think the very first thing you could do today, you could do it today, you could do it tomorrow, the rest of this week, it would not take very much time or effort, is just notice how what you wear is connected to the rest of your day. And tomorrow you could go about whatever you would normally do, but just notice. And then you can start to see, do I notice a change when I wear certain colors? Do I notice a change when I actually get dressed versus just going out in my sweats or whatever that may be?
Right.
Just notice. And of course, if you want to take it another step further, I'll share also, I created a body type blog. You can read more about body types and getting into clothes that suit you just as you are now, as opposed to
Mhm.
feel like you need to change in order to achieve feeling good. So, but I think just start to notice when you wear certain things, does it change your day? Does it make you feel different? And I think you might notice it does.
It's like a mindfulness practice.
It is totally a
It's
mindfulness
totally a
practice.
mindfulness
It's
practice.
totally.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it's just, and I guess what I should say along with this is it can be really easy for us to get down on ourselves about our bodies, just the natural shape we have, or maybe, during the pandemic I heard from women, they gained or they lost weight or just they were off their game.
Right.
And I think it can be easy for us to just say, well, it needs to be fixed. And then when I get there, I'll feel good. But one thing I have been coaching my clients to do, and I talk about this on social too. So if you guys want to just start following me, or I mean, I do share a lot of this
Absolutely.
stuff. I talk a lot about not just, I don't really talk so much about style trends. I talk more about just channeling this, using style to make you feel better. But one thing I love is, when that inner critic starts to, that mean girl talk, whatever you want to call it, that internal dialogue starts happening, what I've tried to do to counteract that is write down 5 things that you do love about your body as is. It might be as simple as your smile,
Mhm.
or maybe you really love the color of your eyes, or your collarbones, or your calves. It could be anything. Write down 5 things and repeat those 5 things to yourself at least daily, or anytime that mean girl critic, that inner
Mhm.
critic starts to get loud. And the reason I suggest doing this is because what I learned from my great friend, educational neuroscientist, is that I like to describe it as, digging tunnels in your brain. So whatever thoughts you're repeating to yourself, a neuroscientist might call it creating new neural pathways. But I
Mhm.
like this imagery of digging a trench. So when I wake up and my mind starts going, maybe I'm in my closet or I'm standing in front of the mirror after a shower and I'm just, all the thoughts are going. Those negative thoughts are digging trenches deeper and deep and deep and deep to the point where those thoughts just become very automatic. There are what we automatically go to when we're not thinking much about it. So the goal is that we want to create new trenches that are more helpful and positive for ourselves. And so the great thing about the brain is that it can shift based on what you repeat. So if you start digging a trench, today, tomorrow, if you write down these 5 things and you keep going with it, you're building that trench. And every day you do it, and every time you have one of those negative thoughts, you're building that trench even bigger, to the point where maybe your negative trench is not as deep. And it's this other one, this self-affirming, I am great just how I am. You're digging that trench even deeper. So I grew up on a farm, and so I was always riding on gravel roads, and it makes me think of that too. Whenever you would try to get off of the if they hadn't graded the dirt road in a while, if you tried to get off of that path, it would just kind of snap you right back into it. It's kind of the similar thing. If you're not thinking much about it, you're just going to snap right back into those negative thoughts, or you're going to snap into those more positive thoughts. And so just some tip that maybe you guys could try out today. I had a friend actually who challenged me to write 50 things that I loved about myself. And for those of you who are challenge seekers, that it is challenging. And it may be more or less challenging for you, but I find that to sit down and be intentional with writing things that you love about yourself is difficult, but it's a good exercise.
Oh, that is so brilliant. And it's so powerful because it's something that people can do right away, today, right now. I held a retreat this weekend, and the ladies and I were talking about the morning inspections. Like when you get up in the morning and you go to the mirror and you're like poking around looking for things that have grown overnight, and
the gray hairs.
And the gray hairs and things like that, where what if instead we had that sticky note of 5 things that we just love about ourselves? And so instead of doing all of these inspections in the morning,
I love that.
Focusing on that sticky note to create that new neural pathway.
I love that.
How powerful.
And just in case anyone's feeling frustrated when they start their 50 things, it took me a really long time. And
it's not a one and done list.
A few weeks. But and the beauty in it is that it really does require you to focus on the good. I love that introspection. That's a great tip.
Well, and I was really grateful because I feel like that's something that happens, I think, from a very young age as a girl, where you start this compare and despair. And so just an interesting concept of having that. I love the idea of just the top things that you love about yourself, having that easily accessible.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I mean, give yourself some grace, because in some cases we have been digging those trenches since we were little girls.
Yes.
I've heard many women tell me stories about being teased for their size or for how they looked. And sadly, those things, they really stick, and they form and shape our opinions of ourselves into our adult, 50 or 60-year-old women that we are. And but it doesn't mean you can't upend it. It doesn't mean you can't upend it. And it is not, I'm going to be the first to say, it's not just you write the 5 things and your problems are going to be solved.
Right.
It's a practice. It's a practice, and a good one to, just embrace. So
the other thing that I'm thinking of is when we're up in the morning and we step into our closet and we say, well, I've got nothing to wear, but we have hangers that are full and a dresser that is bulging, and we feel like we have nothing to wear. I have no idea what the psychology is behind that. If less is more, or what's happening, but it's like we're overwhelmed with too much.
Yeah. I do have some thoughts about what is going on. One, it could be that the things in your closet maybe aren't what you really love. Okay. So going back to taking time to figure out, what is my style? Am I buying things just because I feel like I should, or just to cover up? Or I wear black because Black is supposed to be slimming, but maybe it's not my favorite color. Okay, so that might be something where just the items you have aren't suited to you.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that we have a tendency to categorize our closets. So what I mean is, these clothes, and some women will actually organize their closets in this way. These are my work clothes. These are my casual clothes. These are my going out clothes. These are my weekend clothes. And when we get very segmented like that, it makes it really hard to use our clothes in multiple ways. So one thing I love teaching is, you know, let's not categorize. Let's just think of one wardrobe that can be used in many different ways. So think about like this moto jacket I'm wearing.
Mm-hmm.
You might think, okay, well, that's maybe for like going out, or it's definitely not a workwear item, and it's definitely not for casual weekends. But what if you could expand your mindset and say, well, what is a way that I could wear this in a business setting? What is a way I could wear this outside of what I would normally think to wear? And I'll do this on my social channels often, but I like to challenge myself and those following to take an item in their closet and figure out 3 different ways you could wear that item.
Ooh.
And so when you walk into your closet and you say, I have nothing to wear, it might be linking back to that you're just wearing the same thing in the same way over and over and over. So you get bored with it really quickly.
Right.
And when you can challenge yourself to say, what is a way I could wear that is not in the normal way I wear it? So then your brain is sort of engaged, and you're more excited about the pieces you have when you start to use them in different ways.
Love
So
that.
yeah, I do think boredom with our closet is something that happens to a lot of women. And so when we get bored, then we think we need to go shopping, when that may or may not be the right solution to go shopping. But when you shop, you add more to your
Mm-hmm.
closet, and then you start wearing those things, and maybe you only wear them in one, like you wear it as an outfit, like this top only goes with these jeans. And yet after so much time, you do get bored. And so then you go to more shopping. And so you can see how that can sort of spiral out of control. You keep
Right.
adding, but you're not getting great use out of the things you do have. So that's a really fun thing. I've been able to, I love watching my clients say, oh my gosh, I never thought of wearing it in that way.
Right.
I would have never considered, but then it brings that spark back, like I do love that. I just needed to use it in more ways, so
Yeah. So that, I mean,
there
that's
is
such a
probably
great,
some psychology there.
yeah, for sure. Well, it feels creative and fun and
Yeah.
maybe whimsical to take a piece and wear it in a different way. So I'm hearing
Yeah.
that you help people take what they have and
Yeah.
maybe mix it up and work for
Yeah.
them. And it,
Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge believer in using what you've got if it's good. And if it suits your lifestyle, it suits your style, why not? So when I work with clients, it's a process of looking at what you have and then adding in pieces, smart pieces that reflect your style, that reflect your budget, that reflect your lifestyle. Where do you need to go? Are you going out? Are you working? Are you not working? Because we have a tendency to buy things, but maybe it doesn't suit what we need for our life. So it's, coupling what we have with adding in some few pieces that might help round it out a little bit better,
Mhm.
and then showing them how they can wear those in multiple different ways. So going back to that 3 ways to wear, showing them, okay, let's take this one item in your closet and I'm going to show you how to wear it in different times of the year, in different settings of your life. If you guys follow me, you see one of the things I like to do for myself. I know not everyone wants to do this kind of a creative challenge, but I do a Pinterest style challenge. And I just
Ooh.
posted one last week. So if you go to follow me, you'll see it. But what I do is it's a source of inspiration to stay creative with my closet, to fall in love again with the clothes that I do have. So I pick it, and I have a Pinterest board, devoted to style. I know not everyone does, but maybe you saw a woman wearing something that caught your eye, or you saw someone on social media, a style influencer, you saw a media, like a company you follow, like a clothing company you follow, you saw an outfit there you loved. The challenge is to try to recreate that outfit using what you already have. So you can't go purchase new items, but use that as inspiration. And so, and you don't even have to leave the house. It can just be the act of trying to put something together based on what inspired you, gets those creative juices flowing, and helps you reimagine things that you didn't always look, at in that way. So I try to do it once a month, which is, is an aggressive goal, but it is really fun. And I like encourage if women are, excited about that sort of thing, energized, great. If not, you can just leave that to the wayside. But it is kind of a fun way to get your creative juices flowing.
Well,
and for the women who are like, I have no clue how to do that, I can also show you how to do it. I mean, when we work together, I create these style boards, these head to toe style boards that show you exactly what to put together and how. So it kind of takes all the guesswork out of it. Going back to that no time in the morning thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Brilliant. What I really, really, really hope people are taking away from this conversation are multiple things. Like be aware of what you're putting on in the morning. Is just it does influence and impact how you're showing up for yourself and others throughout the day. You're spending this time and energy and not feeling that great. So there are options. A mindful approach, just paying attention now in this moment of what you are doing and how you are feeling. And, even just like step one is to share with women, you're worth it. This is valuable. Like you and how you are presenting to yourself and the world is important. And I want women to stand up for themselves.
Yes. And to say, I'm important enough to invest in myself. I know I have other people who need me. I know my money is going to be spent on many different important places. But hopefully what you're walking away with is that what something might seem as frivolous is actually something pretty impactful, not just for how you feel on a daily basis, but then, like you said, that energy you're showing up with, how you're moving through the world. And I think you're right. I think when more women choose to do that and show up as their authentic selves, it gives other women permission to do the same.
Yeah. And especially if we have children, being aware of how we're showing up for ourselves is our children are watching and listening to us at all times. And so,
and I have a daughter
about who they are by watching us.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it can be hard to fully embody that because we do feel a lot of pressure to show up in a certain way. But I think as we move throughout the world, people are going to be judging us regardless. I mean, it's why we think about what we put on our bodies when we go on first dates, when we go on an interview, when we have big things in our life. But, people are going to judge no matter what. They're going to see you and have an impression. I just want to make sure that the impression I'm hoping to leave is what I'm showing. And that's all I can do. That's all I can do. I can't change how someone thinks of me when they see me, but I want to leave a certain impression that is a very authentic impression. But yes, I do think about this a lot, and I have had to answer a lot of questions from my daughter, learning I'm a stylist. Why are you doing this? Why is this important? And it really did ensure that I was, always channeling back to what was important, which is it really does change how you feel. And she and I have totally different styles, which is really fun. She's very, I'm sure it'll change as she grows older, but she'll always say, your style is not my style. And I'll say, that's great. The more styles, the merrier, like we don't need to be like everybody else. Just you do you.
Well, this is so funny because I have two daughters and they're 27 months apart. And so obviously for years and years, we had the younger daughter wear the hand-me-downs. And I think
Yes.
it was like fourth grade. I was so proud of her at fourth grade. She said, that's just not really my style.
Oh,
And I was like, okay, I see you and I hear that. And
yeah.
this,
How
you know,
amazing for her to realize that at that age.
yes, like I don't want to wear that specific color or or skirt or whatever. And I was
Uh-huh.
just really impressed. And
Yeah,
she's a Goodwill, she's a thrifter,
I
and
love it.
she buys her own clothes. So it's not like we're operating with big budgets here, but she's just staying
Yeah.
true to her own style. So,
That's one thing I think is important to note, Michelle, is that there is another I think rule that I've heard women when we go through that exercises and we're sort of breaking down those mental barriers we have around style. There
mhm.
is a strong connection for many women that in order to be stylish and fashionable, you have to spend a lot of money.
Mhm.
And it's just not true. In fact, because I've been tuned into this for so, long, for as soon as I started my working career, I didn't have money to spend. I just didn't. I didn't have money to spend to look the way I wanted to look. So I had to get really good at figuring out how to shop the deals, where to find great quality pieces at a good price.
Mhm.
Um, and that has never really left me. And so I want women to know that if you're feeling like, oh, great, I'm going to need to outlay all this cash in order to build this wardrobe that I love for myself, it is not necessarily true. And I think the other piece to that is that when you decide you want to invest, let's make sure it's the right things we're investing in so that you do want to continue to learn. You know how to wear it in multiple ways. You are going to let that piece serve you for many years. And I think when we sort of go shopping blindly and haphazardly is when the closet starts to get out of control, and then we
Right.
feel the guilt about spending but we're not wearing it. But I'm not a believer that style has to cost a lot of money, and so I love hearing, and actually thrifting is a it's kind of come back around as a trend in past years, just because sustainable fashion is such a big topic. And so I
Yes.
love hearing that she enjoys that. I think you can
Yes.
find some amazing things thrifting.
Well, and I think it ties back to the importance of knowing what colors work best for
Yeah,
you, because a
yeah,
lot of thrift stores do organize their
yeah,
racks by color. So that way you can
yeah,
walk in and know and gravitate to the right
yep,
space.
yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well,
So
this
what
has
haven't
been,
we covered that
I don't know, this has been so much
so
fun
many
and
good
super
things.
informative. And I'm so grateful for all, I mean, you're giving my community some incredible resources with the guide and the blog posts. We've talked about, how important it is for your own energy. And obviously with caregivers, we need to put on our own oxygen mask before we can help other
Helping
people.
others. It's so
Yeah,
darn hard, isn't it?
it
Oh,
is. We've talked about your body image and your authentic self. And I just think you are an incredible resource and clearly have a big heart and are ready to help my community.
yeah,
So thank you.
bring it on. Yeah. And you guys, if you want to reach out, feel free. I think Michelle's going to put that into the show notes.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I would love to chat, or if you just want to follow along and spy on me and hear the goodness and the style tips, the style coaching. I really am looking to just help women embrace where they are, embrace the body as it is, and just get into that, just get back to themselves,
Yeah.
get back to feeling good. Even if you feel like, I once had it going on in my 20s and I was in a groove, and now I don't know what has happened and I don't know how to find my way back. Trust me, there's a quote by Diane von Furstenberg that says, everyone has a style, you just need to find it. And I love that, because I think there's just lots of things that can cloud you in this road of life, and get you away from who it is that you are. So,
I love that. Well, thank you for being on, and we will put everything in
well,
the show notes. Is Instagram your favorite spot you're hanging out?
so I would say Instagram and LinkedIn are the two spots where you can find me.
Okay,
So on Instagram, I'm style.decoded. And then on LinkedIn, just by my name, Ellie Steinbrink.
perfect. All right.
Yep.
Well, thank you
Thank you so much, Michelle.